The Grand Assembly Hall stretched across 3 kilometers of orbital station, a cathedral of glass and linen crystal that had witnessed 10,000 years of galactic history. And today it would witness something unprecedented. 47 species had gathered in the circular chamber, their representatives seated in ascending tiers that rose toward a ceiling painted with the light of distant stars. And at the center stood a podium carved from the heart of a dead world. A reminder of what war could bring. Daniel Carter adjusted his tie as he watched the proceedings from Earth's delegation box on the lower tier. His gray eyes calm despite the tension that filled the room like static electricity before a storm. Catherine Morgan sat beside him, her posture rigid with barely contained anger as she listened to the accusations being read. Against humanity, the humans have violated 17 articles of the Frontier Accords, Ambassador Vexter declared, his forearms spreading wide as his reptilian voice echoed through the chamber. They have expanded beyond their designated boundaries. They have refused to share critical technologies with the Council, and they have threatened the stability of our peaceful union. Daniel said nothing, his expression unchanged as species after species rose to add their voices to the condemnation. The Valkyrie spoke of human ships seen in forbidden sectors. The Drathian accused Earth of hoarding medical advances that could save billions. And the Morkai claimed human colonists had settled on worlds promised to their expansion. Catherine leaned close to Daniel and whispered, "This is absurd. Half of these accusations are completely fabricated." "I know," Daniel replied quietly. "That is precisely the point." The voting began at the 13th hour of the session, and Daniel watched as light after light turned red against humanity. 31 votes for war, 16 against. With Earth abstaining, as was their right. Vexter's lipless mouth curved into something resembling satisfaction as he rose to deliver the formal declaration, his scales shimmering under the chamber lights. "By the authority vested in this council by the Galactic Compact of Unity, I hereby declare a state of war between the United Species Coalition and the human world known as Earth," he announced, savoring each word. "Your fleets will be destroyed, your colonies seized, and your species will learn the price of defying the galactic order." Ah! Murmur of approval rippled through the coalition members while the neutral species watched in uncomfortable silence. All eyes turned to the human delegation, waiting for the fear, the protests, the desperate pleas for mercy that always came when a younger species faced the combined might of the galaxy. Daniel Carter rose slowly from his seat, and the chamber fell silent. He was not a tall man, not particularly imposing in any physical sense, but something in his demeanor commanded attention as he walked toward the central podium. "Ambassador Vexter," he said, his voice carrying easily through the acoustics of the ancient hall. "Distinguished representatives of the Galactic Council, I have listened to your accusations with great interest." He paused, reaching up to adjust his tie once more. And then he smiled. It was not a nervous smile or a diplomatic smile meant to smooth tensions. It was the smile of a man who held cards that no one else knew existed. "Not yet," he said simply. Vextar's 4 eyes narrowed in confusion. "I beg your pardon?" "You declared war," Daniel continued. "And I said not yet because, you see, there are certain facts that this council has not been made aware of. Facts that I believe will significantly alter the nature of these proceedings." He reached into his jacket pocket and withdrew a small data device no larger than his thumb. "Before this vote took place, I was authorized by Secretary General Laura Bennett to present this information only in the event of a declaration of war," Daniel explained. "We hoped it would not come to this, but humanity has learned to prepare for the worst while hoping for the best." Catherine stood from her seat, her hand moving to activate a portable holographic projector that she had carried into the chamber, disguised as a personal translator. "What is the meaning of this interruption?" Vexter demanded. "The vote is concluded. The declaration stands," your pathetic attempts to delay the inevitable will not save your species. I have no intention of delaying anything, Daniel replied calmly. I intend to reveal the truth. The holographic display flickered to life above the central podium, filling the chamber with images and data streams that made several representatives gasp in recognition. 6 months ago, Earth's intelligence services intercepted communications between Ambassador Vexter and 17 other coalition members, Daniel explained. These communications detailed a coordinated campaign to fabricate evidence against humanity, to bribe neutral parties into supporting the war vote, and to divide the spoils of Earth among the conspirators. The chamber erupted into chaos as representatives shouted denials, demanded proof, and accused Daniel of desperate fabrication. But Daniel simply waited, his smile never wavering, as the evidence played out above their heads. Financial records showing enormous transfers to neutral species ambassadors, falsified sensor logs that had been presented as proof of human violations, and recorded conversations in which Vexter himself discussed how humanity's resources would be divided among his allies. This is outrageous, Vexter roared, slamming one of his 4 fists against the podium. These are obvious forgeries created by human technology to deceive this council, are they? Daniel asked, and he gestured toward a section of the gallery where an insectoid figure was rising to their feet. I am Ambassador Chitra of the Valkyrie Communion, the insectoid announced, their voice clicking and buzzing through their translator. And I am here to confirm that everything the human representative has shown you is true. I was part of the conspiracy, and I am here to testify against those who would have used this council as a weapon of conquest. The silence that followed was absolute. Daniel stepped forward, his voice carrying to every corner of the chamber. Earth does not want war, he declared. We never wanted war, but we knew it might come. And so we prepared not with weapons, but with truth. I am authorized to offer an alternative to this council, an independent tribunal to investigate all claims against humanity and against those who conspired to bring us to this moment. Vexter stared at Daniel with undisguised hatred, his scales darkening with rage. The Dominion Coalition rejects your tribunal, he spat. We do not need this council to wage war. Our fleets will burn your worlds to ash, and your clever words will not save you. He turned and stormed from the chamber, followed by his closest allies. Leaving the remaining representatives in stunned silence, Daniel watched them go, then turned back to address the council. For those who remain, he said quietly, I suggest we discuss what comes next, because I assure you, Earth is ready for whatever the Dominion brings. Catherine joined him at the podium as the neutral species began to whisper among themselves. Do you think they will actually attack? She asked. Daniel's smile faded into something harder, something that spoke of preparations made in secret and weapons held in reserve. They will try, he said, and that is exactly what we are counting on. 3 days had passed since Vexter stormed out of the Grand Assembly Hall, and the galaxy held its breath as the Dominion Coalition gathered its forces along the borders of human space, in a secure briefing room deep beneath Earth's government complex in Geneva. Secretary General Laura Bennett studied the tactical displays with the focus of someone who had spent decades preparing for this exact moment. How many ships have they assembled? She asked. Admiral Christopher Lane stood across the table, his weathered face illuminated by the glow of holographic star maps that showed enemy positions in angry, red clusters. 400 capital ships confirmed, with support vessels bringing the total to nearly 2,000, he reported. They have concentrated the bulk of their forces near the new Cascadia system, our largest agricultural colony. Laura nodded slowly, her silver hair catching the light as she turned to address the third person in the room. Director Hughes, what do your people have for us? Ryan Hughes was not a man who attracted attention, which was precisely why he excelled at running Earth's intelligence operations. His ordinary face and forgettable features had allowed him to walk unseen through 100 alien worlds. 15 years of preparation. "Madam Secretary," he replied, producing a data tablet that projected a web of interconnected nodes and pathways. "We have assets embedded at every level of Dominion command structure. We know their battle plans before their own captains do, and more importantly, we know why they really want this war." Lavra exchanged a glance with Admiral Lane. "The resource theory?" "Confirmed," Hughes said, his voice carrying an edge of disgust. "The Dominion has been studying humanity since first contact. They discovered something that terrifies them and excites them in equal measure: human creativity." He expanded the display to show biological data and comparative analyses. "Every spacefaring species in the galaxy develops technology along predictable pathways," he explained. "They find solutions that work, and they refine those solutions over millennia. But they rarely innovate beyond their initial discoveries. Humans are different." Admiral Lane leaned forward with interest. "Different how?" "In the past 200 years, humanity has developed more novel technologies than most species create in 10,000. Hughes continued. "Our brains are wired for innovation in ways that alien scientists cannot fully understand. We look at problems and we see solutions that others cannot even imagine. And that makes us the most valuable resource in the galaxy." Laura's expression hardened. "They want to harvest us." "Enslave would be more accurate," Hughes confirmed. "Dominion research facilities have been developing technology to extract and digitize human thought patterns. They plan to capture our population and use our minds as living computers, forcing us to solve their problems and advance their civilization for eternity." The room fell silent as the full horror of the Dominion's intentions settled over them. "Does Daniel know?" Laura finally asked. "I briefed him personally before he left for the council," Hughes replied. "He agreed that revealing the full scope of Dominion plans should wait until after the first engagement. We need the galaxy to see that we can defend ourselves before we expose the true nature of our enemy." Admiral Lane straightened, his resolve visibly strengthening. "Then we give them that engagement. Our forces are in position at New Cascadia, and I promise you that the Dominion will regret every light year they travel toward our people." Lavra placed her hand on the Admiral's shoulder. "Just remember, Christopher, we fight to protect, not to conquer. When this is over, I want humanity to be known for our restraint as much as our strength." "Understood." "Madam Secretary," Lane replied, "I should return to Fleet Command. The Dominion advance forces will reach New Cascadia within 18 hours." As the Admiral departed, Laura turned to Hughes with a question that had been weighing on her mind. "The sabotage program, is it ready?" Hughes allowed himself a rare smile. "We have been planting the seeds for a decade. Madam Secretary, sleeper agents in Dominion shipyards, corrupted software in their weapon systems, and loyalty doubts carefully cultivated among their officer corps. When the time comes, their entire military infrastructure will collapse from within. And our allies? 12 species have secretly agreed to support us once we demonstrate that we can fight," Hughes reported. "They are tired of Dominion bullying, and they see in humanity a chance to reshape the galactic order." Ambassador Chitra's testimony was just the beginning. Lavra walked to the window and looked out at the city below, where millions of people went about their lives unaware of the storm, gathering in the darkness between stars. "I never wanted this," she said quietly. "All those years of diplomacy, of trying to find common ground with species who saw us as nothing more than resources to be exploited. I genuinely believed we could change their minds through patience and understanding." "You still can," Hughes replied. "This war will not last long, and when it ends, we will have the opportunity to build something better. A galaxy where younger species are protected rather than preyed upon." Lavra turned back to face him. her eyes reflecting the determination that had carried her through 30 years of public service. "Then let us make certain we are worthy of that responsibility," she said, coordinate with Daniel at the council. "I want our evidence of Dominion slavery plans ready to present the moment our fleet demonstrates that we cannot be conquered easily. Already in progress," Hughes confirmed. Daniel has been working the neutral species representatives around the clock. By the time the battle at New Cascadia concludes, he will have the votes needed to transform this from a war of survival into a war of liberation. Lavra smiled grimly. The Dominion declared war on humanity, expecting a quick victory over a young and naive species. They badly miscalculated. Hughes agreed. "They did," Lavra said, walking back toward her desk where 100 urgent messages awaited her attention. "They forgot that humanity has been fighting for survival since we first climbed down from the trees. We have faced extinction dozens of times, and we are still here, still growing, still reaching for the stars." She paused at her desk and looked back at Hughes with fire in her eyes. "Now we will show the galaxy what happens when you threaten the human family." Hughes nodded and departed to coordinate the final preparations, leaving Laura alone with her thoughts and the weight of 8 billion lives resting on decisions made in rooms like this one in the distance. Beyond the clouds, beyond the thin blue atmosphere that had sheltered human evolution for millions of years, the stars waited, and among those stars, fleets were moving toward a confrontation that would change the galaxy forever. The skies above New Cascadia had always been peaceful, filled with nothing more threatening than the cargo ships that carried grain and produce to hungry colonies across human space. But today those skies burned with the light of 200 warships descending through the atmosphere. Governor Samuel Brooks stood on the roof of the Colonial Administration Building, watching the distant flashes of the orbital battle through a tactical display mounted on his wrist. "Governor, we need to move to the emergency bunker," his aide urged. "Not yet," Brooks replied, his voice steady despite the chaos unfolding above. "Our people need to see that their leaders are not hiding while they fight. Get me a channel to all emergency frequencies." The aide handed him a communicator, and Brooks began to speak to the 3 million colonists scattered across the agricultural world. "This is Governor Brooks. As many of you have already seen, Dominion forces have entered our system and are attempting to land invasion troops. I will not pretend that the next few hours will be easy, but I want every one of you to know that you are not alone." He paused, watching as another Dominion ship exploded in the upper atmosphere, struck by fire from the defending fleet. "Earth's Navy is fighting for us in orbit, and I have been informed that Admiral Lane himself is leading our defense. For those who cannot reach the evacuation shelters, find cover and stay hidden. For those who can fight, report to your local defense coordinator." He lowered the communicator and turned to his aide. "How many militia units do we have active?" 12,000 armed volunteers, mostly farmers and workers with hunting experience," the aide reported. "They cannot match Dominion soldiers in direct combat, but they know this land better than any invader ever could." Brooks nodded grimly. "Then we make them pay for every kilometer. Contact the militia commanders. I want ambush set up along every major road and landing zone. If the Dominion wants our world, they will have to dig us out one farm at a time, far above the planet's surface." The battle in space raged with a fury that the Dominion had not anticipated. Captain Nathan Cole stood on the bridge of the Resolute, Earth's newest carrier and the flagship of the defensive fleet, watching as his tactical officer worked her console with desperate speed. "Lieutenant Grant, report." The order Amanda Grant was young for her position, barely 30 years old, but her mind processed tactical data faster than anyone Cole had ever served with. "Enemy formation is fragmenting." "Captain," she reported, her fingers dancing across holographic controls. "Their lead elements expected minimal resistance. They are not adapting well to our countermeasures. Cole smiled grimly. "Show me the shield harmonics data." The main display shifted to show the interaction between human shields and Dominion weapons fire. And what it revealed made Cole's smile widen for decades. Humanity had publicly maintained a defensive military posture, building ships that appeared adequate but unimpressive compared to the older species of the galaxy. But in secret, Earth's engineers had been developing technology that would have seemed like magic to their adversaries. "Their plasma weapons are completely ineffective," Grant confirmed. "Our adaptive shields are analyzing their frequency patterns and neutralizing them before they can cause damage. They have no idea how to hurt us. And our weapons? Cutting through their armor like it does not exist, Captain," Grant replied. "Our railguns are accelerating projectiles to velocities they have never encountered. And our targeting systems are predicting their evasive maneuvers with 97% accuracy." Cole opened a channel to the fleet. "All ships, this is Resolute. Execute flanking maneuver Delta 7. I want their formations split and their command ships isolated across the battlefield." 43 human warships moved with coordination that the Dominion commanders could not match. Their movements precise and unpredictable, exploiting gaps in the enemy formation that seemed to close almost before they opened. Admiral Lane watched the engagement from his command station aboard the carrier Defiant, pride swelling in his chest as his crews performed exactly as they had trained. "The enemy is breaking," his tactical officer reported. "They have lost 63 ships, and their remaining forces are falling back toward their support fleet." Lane shook his head. "They still do not understand. They think this is a temporary setback, that they can regroup and try again with different tactics." "Sir?" "Signal the fleet," Lane ordered. "Do not pursue beyond the engagement zone. Let them retreat, and let them report back to their masters what happened here today." "Understood, Admiral. But if I may ask, why not press the advantage?" Lane turned to face his officer with an expression that mixed satisfaction with something approaching pity for their enemies. "Because we are not trying to win a battle, Lieutenant. We are trying to win a war without destroying the species we defeat. When those survivors reach Dominion space and describe what happened here, their leaders will have to make a choice." He returned his attention to the tactical display, where the remaining Dominion ships were fleeing at maximum speed. They can acknowledge that they cannot defeat humanity through force, or they can send more ships to die. Either way, we demonstrate to the galaxy that we cannot be conquered while proving that we have no interest in conquest ourselves. On the surface of New Cascadia, the ground invasion was faring even worse than the space battle. Dominion landing craft had touched down expecting frightened farmers who would scatter at the first sign of advanced weaponry. Instead, they found a population that had been preparing for exactly this scenario for generations. Samuel Brooks led a militia unit through the grain fields south of the capital city, his old military training coming back to him like muscle memory. "Contact 200 meters north," his scout reported through the tactical network. Brooks raised his hand to halt his team. 40 volunteers armed with hunting rifles and improvised explosives who knew every irrigation ditch and storage barn in the region. "Let them advance into the kill zone," he ordered quietly. "Wait for my signal." The Dominion soldiers moved through the tall grain with the arrogance of warriors who had conquered a dozen worlds, their advanced armor gleaming, their weapons humming with deadly energy. They never saw the trap until it was too late. "Now," Brooks commanded. And the fields erupted with gunfire from 3 directions. The Dominion soldiers scrambled for cover. But there was no cover to be found in the open farmland, and their armor was designed to stop energy weapons, not the solid projectiles that punched through them like paper. Within 3 minutes, the enemy patrol was eliminated, and Brooks was already moving his team toward the next ambush. Similar scenes played out across the planet as Dominion forces encountered resistance that their intelligence had completely failed to predict by the time the sun set on New Cascadia. The invasion had stalled completely, with enemy forces pinned down at their landing zones and taking casualties from an enemy they could barely see in orbit. The human fleet had settled into a defensive posture, having destroyed or driven off over 80 enemy vessels while losing only 12 of their own. Captain Cole stood on the bridge of the Resolute, watching the distant lights of the retreating Dominion fleet. Lieutenant Grant, "Send a message to Admiral Lane," he said. "Tell him that New Cascadia stands, and humanity has just announced its presence to the galaxy." Amanda Grant smiled as she composed the message, knowing that this battle was only the beginning. Far away in the Grand Assembly Hall, Daniel Carter received word of the victory and began preparing for the next phase of his mission. The galaxy had seen that humanity could fight. Now they would learn why the Dominion truly wanted this war. The news of New Cascadia spread through the galaxy like wildfire, carried on 1,000 communication channels that the Dominion could not silence. Species that had never paid attention to humanity suddenly found themselves watching footage of the battle, seeing Dominion warships explode under human fire and invasion forces retreat in disarray from a world of farmers. In the Grand Assembly Hall, the atmosphere had shifted dramatically since Vexthor's dramatic departure, and now representatives who had voted for war whispered nervously among themselves while neutral. Species watched Daniel Carter with new respect. "Council will come to order," the ancient keeper of proceedings announced, a crystalline form chiming with harmonic vibrations that silenced the chamber. Daniel rose from his seat and walked to the central podium, carrying a data device that contained information far more damaging than anything he had revealed before. "Distinguished representatives," he began. 3 days ago, Ambassador Vexthor declared that the Dominion Coalition would destroy humanity without the Council's assistance. Yesterday, 200 of their warships attempted to conquer a single human agricultural colony. He paused, letting the weight of his next words settle over the assembly. They failed. They lost 80 vessels while we lost 12. Their ground invasion was repelled by farmers armed with hunting rifles, and their survivors are now fleeing back to Dominion space with tailies of human weapons they cannot understand and human tactics they cannot counter. Murmurs rippled through the chamber as representatives absorbed the implications of this news, but I did not request this session to discuss military matters. Daniel continued, "I requested this session because it is time for the galaxy to know the true reason the Dominion wants war with humanity." He activated the data device, and the chamber's holographic systems came to life with images that made several representatives gasp in horror. Research facilities filled with strange equipment, holding cells designed for humanoid occupants, and technical schematics that showed devices meant to interface directly with living brains. For 15 years, Earth's intelligence services have had agents embedded within the Dominion, Daniel explained. "We knew they were watching us, studying us, and we wanted to understand why." He gestured to a display showing biological comparison data. "What we discovered was that the Dominion had identified something unique about human neurology. Our species possesses a capacity for creative thought that exceeds anything else in the known galaxy. We innovate, we adapt, we solve problems in ways that other species cannot replicate." The display shifted to show intercepted communications and research reports. The Dominion did not want to destroy humanity. They wanted to enslave us. These facilities were designed to capture human populations and extract our thought patterns, turning our minds into tools for their technological advancement. A ripple of horror spread through the chamber as representatives understood the implications. "They planned to keep us alive but imprisoned," Daniel continued, his voice hardening with controlled anger, "forcing us to think for them, to solve their problems, to advance their civilization while our bodies wasted away in their laboratories." He turned to face the section of the chamber where Dominion allies still sat. Some of you knew about this plan. Some of you were promised shares of human creativity in exchange for your support. You voted for war knowing that you were voting to enslave an entire species. Several representatives shifted uncomfortably, unable to meet Daniel's gaze. "But I am not here to condemn you," Daniel said. Surprising many in the chamber, I am here to offer you a choice. The Dominion's plan has failed. Their military has proven incapable of conquering humanity, and their conspiracy has been exposed to the entire galaxy. He extended his hands in a gesture of openness. You can continue to support a losing cause, or you can join humanity and our allies in building a new galactic order. One where younger species are protected rather than exploited, where creativity is shared rather than stolen, and where the strong defend the weak instead of preying upon them before anyone could respond. The chamber's communication systems crackled with an incoming transmission, and the massive holographic display flickered to show a face that most representatives had never seen. High Chancellor Mordock of the Dominion stood revealed, his reptilian features larger and more intimidating than Vexthur's, his four eyes burning with cold fury. "Human," he growled, "you believe you have won something here today, but you have merely postponed the inevitable." Daniel faced the transmission without flinching. "High Chancellor, I was wondering when you would show yourself. Your pathetic victory at New Cascadia changes nothing." Mordock continued. "I command fleets that number in the thousands, armies that have crushed civilizations older than your species. You cannot win this war." "Perhaps not," Daniel replied calmly, "but neither can you. And I suspect you are beginning to realize that." Mordock's scales darkened with anger. "You dare to threaten me?" "I dare to offer you the same choice I offered your allies," Daniel said. "Surrender your leadership to stand trial for conspiracy and planned enslavement. Allow your people to reform under supervised governance. And this war ends today without further bloodshed." The High Chancellor's laugh echoed through the chamber, harsh and mocking. "You think I will surrender because of one lost battle?" he demanded. "I will burn your worlds to ash. I will hunt your species to extinction, and I will personally ensure that any survivors spend eternity in our extraction facilities." Daniel nodded slowly, as if he had expected this response. "I thought you might say that," he replied, and he turned to Catherine Morgan, who stood waiting at the edge of the chamber with a communication device in her hand. "Catherine, please inform Admiral Lane that the High Chancellor has declined our offer." Catherine raised the device to her lips and spoke clearly. "Admiral, you are authorized to proceed with Operation Cascade." Mordock's expression shifted from anger to confusion. "What is Operation Cascade?" Daniel smiled, the same knowing smile he had worn when the Council first declared war. "For the past decade, we have been placing assets throughout your military infrastructure," he explained. "Sleeper agents in your shipyards, corrupted software in your weapon systems, and carefully cultivated doubts among your officer corps." The High Chancellor's eyes widened as alarms began sounding somewhere off-screen. "As of this moment, 60% of your defensive systems have been disabled. Half of your senior officers have received evidence of your enslavement plan and are reconsidering their loyalty. And your personal guard is about to receive new orders on the transmission." Uniformed Dominion soldiers appeared behind Mordock, their weapons raised not at the camera, but at their supreme leader, High Chancellor Mordock. One of the soldiers announced, "By order of the Dominion Officer Corps, you are under arrest for crimes against sentient life." Mordock spun to face his guards, his forearms reaching for weapons that were no longer at his side. "This is treason. I am your leader. I command you to stand down." "You commanded us to enslave a species," the soldier replied. "We joined the military to protect our people, not to commit atrocities." The transmission cut out as Mordock was restrained, leaving the Grand Assembly in stunned silence. Daniel turned back to face the gathered representatives, his expression softening. "The war is over," he announced. "Dominion forces are standing down across all fronts, and their government is requesting negotiations." He paused, looking around the chamber at species who had voted to destroy humanity just days ago. "Now we must decide what kind of galaxy we want to build together." 6 months had passed since High Chancellor Mordok's arrest, and the galaxy had transformed in ways that no one could have predicted. Earth's fleet, joined by 12 allied species who had secretly pledged their support, moved through former Dominion space, not as conquerors, but as peacekeepers, their weapons silent as they oversaw the transition of power. Admiral Christopher Lane stood on the bridge of Decaria defiant, watching through the viewport as Dominion civilian ships passed by without fear. Their crews no longer taught to hate humanity, but instead curious about the species that had defeated their leaders without destroying their civilization. "Admiral, we are receiving a transmission from the interim Dominion government," his communications officer reported. "Put it through." Lane ordered. The screen flickered to life, showing a female Dominion officer whose scales bore the markings of high rank but whose eyes held none of the arrogance Lane had come to expect from her species. "Admiral Lane, I am Fleet Commander Kirsa," she introduced herself. "I wanted to personally thank you for the restraint your forces have shown during this transition." Lane nodded respectfully. "We made a promise, Commander. We said we would hold your leaders accountable without punishing your people. And humanity keeps its promises. Many of us did not believe you," Kirsa admitted. "When the truth about the enslavement program was revealed, we expected humanity to seek revenge. We expected occupation and oppression and the same treatment we had planned for you. That is not who we are," Lane replied. Simply. Karisa's expression softened into something that might have been shame. "No, it is not. And that is why so many of our officers chose to surrender rather than fight. They saw in humanity something they could not find in their own leadership: honor on the diplomatic front." The changes were even more dramatic. The Grand Assembly Hall had been transformed from a place of accusation into a hall of reconciliation, where representatives from 47 species worked together to draft new agreements that would reshape galactic society. Daniel Cotter presided over the final session of the War Crimes Tribunal, where Mordok and 17 of his co-conspirators faced judgment for their planned enslavement of humanity. High Chancellor Mordok, the keeper of proceedings, announced, "You have been found guilty of conspiracy to commit species-wide enslavement, falsification of evidence to provoke an unjust war, and crimes against sentient dignity. How do you respond?" Mordok stood in the prisoner's dock, his forearms bound, his scales dull with the stress of his imprisonment, but his defiance unbroken. "I regret nothing," he declared. "Humanity is a threat to everything the older species have built. Your creativity, your unpredictability, your refusal to accept the natural order of the galaxy. We should have destroyed you when we had the chance." Daniel rose to address the court, his voice calm and measured. "High Chancellor, you are not wrong that humanity is different," he acknowledged. "We do think in ways that other species find difficult to understand. We do innovate at speeds that make older civilizations uncomfortable." He paused, looking around the chamber at representatives who had once voted to destroy his species. "But you made a fundamental error in your assessment of humanity," Daniel continued. "You saw our creativity as a resource to be harvested, when in truth it is a gift we have always been willing to share. You saw our unpredictability as a threat, when it is actually our greatest strength in solving problems that others have abandoned." He turned back to face Mordok directly. "You could have asked for our help. You could have proposed partnerships and exchanges and mutual advancement. Instead, you chose fear and domination. And that choice has cost you everything." The keeper of proceedings pronounced the sentence: lifetime imprisonment in a facility designed to prevent escape but not to cause suffering, with the possibility of eventual rehabilitation as Murdoch was led away. Daniel felt a hand on his shoulder and turned to find Catherine Morgan standing beside him. "It is done," she said quietly. "No," Daniel replied, shaking his head. "It is just beginning." He gestured toward the chamber doors, where representatives of 3 new species waited to address the council. Species that had watched humanity's handling of the crisis and decided they wanted to join an alliance built on protection rather than exploitation. The Merkai Confederation, the Valkyrie Communion, and the Drathian Assembly have all petitioned to join the Earth Alliance, Catherine reported. That brings our total allied species to 15, with more expressing interest every day. Daniel allowed himself a small smile. Not bad for a species that was facing extinction 6 months ago. The formal work of rebuilding continued for hours. Treaties signed and agreements ratified. But eventually, even diplomats need rest. Daniel found himself standing on observation deck of the orbital station, looking out at the stars that humanity had once dreamed of reaching and now traveled freely. Catherine joined him, 2 cups of coffee in her hands, a luxury she had brought from Earth for exactly this moment. "The Secretary General sends her congratulations," she reported, handing him a cup. "And she wanted me to remind you that you are expected back on Earth for the victory celebration next week." Daniel took the coffee gratefully. "Victory celebration seems like the wrong term. We did not defeat the Dominion. We convinced them to stop fighting. Is that not better than victory?" Catherine asked. "Much better," Daniel agreed. "Victory means someone had to lose. What we achieved is something different, a chance for everyone to win." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching ships from a dozen species pass by the station on their way to destinations scattered across the galaxy. "Do you think it will last?" Catherine finally asked. "This peace we have built?" Daniel considered the question carefully before answering. "I think humanity has shown the galaxy something it needed to see," he said. "For 10,000 years, power in this galaxy has been about dominance. About strong species exploiting weak ones. About treating younger civilizations as resources rather than partners." He turned to face Catherine, his eyes reflecting the starlight. "We proved that there is another way. That strength can be used to protect rather than conquer. That creativity can be shared rather than hoarded. That mercy is not weakness, but the highest expression of power." Catherine nodded slowly. "And if someone challenges that vision?" Daniel smiled, the same confident smile he had worn in the council chamber when the war was declared. "Then we will show them what we showed the Dominion," he replied. "That humanity does not fight wars we cannot win, because we do not fight until we have already ensured victory." He raised his coffee cup in a quiet toast to the future, Catherine, and to all the species who will share it with us. Far below the observation deck, on a blue and green world called Earth, billions of humans went about their lives, working and dreaming and creating, unaware that their very existence had just reshaped the destiny of the galaxy and among the stars. In council chambers and on warships and in the quiet spaces between worlds, countless beings looked toward humanity with something new in their hearts. Not fear, not hatred, not the predatory interest of those who sought to exploit, but hope that the galaxy could become something better than it had been, hope that the strong could choose to protect the weak, hope that the future might be brighter than the past. And in the Grand Assembly Hall, where war had been declared and then undone, a new document was being prepared, not a declaration of war, but a declaration of alliance, a promise that humanity would stand with any species that chose peace over conquest, cooperation over exploitation, and justice over revenge. The galaxy had declared war on Earth, and Earth had responded by offering friendship. It was, Daniel thought as he watched the stars, the most human thing they could have done.